For decades, globalization was sold to the world as an unstoppable engine of progress. It promised cheaper products, faster innovation, wider markets, and a future where nations would become so economically interconnected that major disruption would become almost impossible. And for a long time, that promise seemed real. A laptop assembled in China could contain chips designed in California, rare minerals extracted in Africa, precision machinery built in Europe, and shipping insurance underwritten in London, all moving through a system so smooth that consumers barely noticed the complexity behind the convenience. The modern world became addicted to this invisible machine. We stopped asking where things came from. We only cared that they arrived quickly and cheaply. Stores remained full. Fuel kept moving. Electronics became more affordable. Corporations made record profits. Efficiency became the religion of the global economy, but efficiency has a dark side. Because every time companies cut costs, they also cut buffers. Every time production was centralized, they also created dependence. Every time supply chains stretched across continents, they also created exposure. Globalization did not eliminate vulnerability. It redistributed it, then hid it beneath convenience. The world was no longer built on independent national systems. It was built on one giant synchronized machine. And synchronized machines are powerful until one gear slips. That is the hidden truth of the modern economy. The stronger the connections became, the weaker the weak points became. A single disruption no longer stays local. It travels, it jumps borders, it jumps industries, it jumps currencies, it jumps into household budgets. One blocked route can become global inflation. One factory shutdown can become a technology shortage. One regional war can become a food crisis thousands of miles away. That is not a theory anymore. It is now the operating reality of the global system. According to current global supply chain assessments, volatility is no longer viewed as a temporary event, but as a structural condition of international trade. The era of assuming smooth, uninterrupted movement is over. World Economic Forum. And this matters because the global economy was never redesigned for resilience. It was redesigned for speed. Corporations spent 40 years perfecting one objective: how to make products at the lowest possible cost. That meant fewer backup suppliers, fewer domestic factories, less warehousing, more outsourced manufacturing, more just-in-time shipping, more reliance on politically sensitive regions. As long as nothing went wrong, this looked genius. Margins improved, shareholders celebrated, consumers benefited, but the moment disruptions began to stack on top of each other, the brilliance started looking like recklessness. Pandemics, trade wars, shipping attacks, energy shocks, semiconductor shortages, canal congestion, regional military escalation. Each event revealed the same uncomfortable fact. The machine was efficient, but fragile, and fragility is dangerous when the entire planet is dependent on the machine. Today, nearly everything you touch, your smartphone, your medicine, your car, your groceries, your internet hardware, even the fertilizer used to grow food, depends on systems that pass through critical narrow points few ordinary people ever think about. Invisible corridors, invisible suppliers, invisible industrial monopolies. The global order still looks enormous, but underneath that enormous system sits a surprisingly small number of bottlenecks. A handful of sea lanes carry the majority of maritime trade. A handful of industrial facilities produce the most critical semiconductors. A handful of countries process the minerals required for advanced manufacturing. The world feels diversified, but the world did not fully realize this shift while it was happening. Because the system didn't break all at once, it bent slowly, silently, almost invisibly. A container stuck in a canal, a ship delayed by a storm, a factory paused for a missing chip, a port operating at reduced capacity, a single trade route temporarily blocked. Each event looked small on its own, temporary, isolated, fixable. But in a tightly synchronized global system, Nothing is truly isolated anymore. Every delay ripples outward. A shipment delayed in Asia becomes a product shortage in Europe. A disrupted port in the Middle East becomes rising prices in South America. A missing semiconductor in Taiwan halts car production in North America. The shockwaves travel faster than the news itself, and the uncomfortable reality is this: the global economy does not react linearly anymore. It reacts exponentially, because every dependency is connected to another dependency, which is connected to another system, which is connected to final consumer behavior. This is why modern disruptions feel different. They don't stay local long enough to be absorbed. They multiply. And among all these vulnerabilities, a few strategic choke points silently hold disproportionate power. Not because they are large, but because they are narrow. A narrow sea lane where oil flows. A narrow canal where global shipping cuts weeks of distance. A narrow passage where trade between continents is compressed into a single corridor. If one of these points is disrupted, the system doesn't just slow down. It reconfigures itself under pressure. Routes change. Prices adjust. Contracts break. Markets panic. Governments intervene. And suddenly, a local issue becomes a global economic event. This is the paradox of globalization. It created a world that is more connected than ever before, but also more synchronized than ever before. And synchronization means one thing: when one part moves incorrectly, everything feels it. That is why the future of global trade is no longer just about efficiency. It is about resilience. Countries are now quietly asking questions they ignored for decades. Where are we dependent? Where are we exposed? Where do we have no backup? What happens if the flow stops, even for a week? Because the illusion of endless, smooth flow has already been broken, and what replaces it will define the next global era. Not just faster trade, but safer trade. Not just cheaper production, but stable production. Not just global expansion, but controlled dependence. The age of blind globalization is ending, and the age of strategic fragility awareness has already begun.